Thank you, Maureen, for that lovely introduction, and thank you to all of you for your warm welcome. And what a lovely video. And I want to start by thanking all of you here today for all the work that you do every day, work that makes it possible to show such wonderful photos of the action and activity that goes on in our union. And of course, I want to thank the presidential team and all of our NEC for all of their work over the year. And to all our regional convener teams for the leadership they show in making our union work. Thanks to our self-organised groups and our service groups. And of course, thank you to all of our staff for your dedication and the partnership work that goes on right across the union. The conference, I don't normally do this, but I want to pay tribute to a member of staff who's retiring at the end of the year. This is his 42nd conference. He's been a member, an activist, and a full-time officer. And in the past few years, he's been the Assistant General Secretary for our regions, and so many of you will know him, Kevin Nelson. He's going to kill me for this. I know how much I'm going to miss Kevin, and I'd really like to ask all of you to join me in thanking Kevin for everything, and I mean everything, that he's done for our union over those years. Conference, what a momentous year it's been. The last time this time last year, we were only weeks away from a general election after 14 years of the Tories. The country was crying out for change, and most of us were hoping for a Labour government. Well, as we know, Labour not only won, they won with a huge majority. And yes, we're seeing some significant changes. Changes like the Employment Rights Bill, the biggest boost to workers' rights in over 70 years. It spells an end to 0 hours contracts and fire and rehire, and paves the way for better maternity and carers leave, and the introduction of day one rights, including the right to sick pay. Rights that will make a huge difference to workers everywhere. And crucially, the bill puts an end to some of the worst anti-trade union legislation introduced by the Tories. It will give unions greater freedom to organise, represent, and negotiate for their members. And next year, we should see the implementation of electronic balloting. At last, union voting moves into the 21st century. And we've played our part in creating that bill. From the weekend, I and the Labour Link Committee spent locked away with senior Labour politicians, arguing over every word in the draft manifesto to make sure it was as strong as possible. Right through to today, where we're still in meetings with senior politicians and civil servants, looking at what those promises mean in reality. Time and time again, we make the case for workers' rights, and we'll keep on doing it until real progress is made. Some of these promises could have a massive impact on hundreds of thousands of UNISON members. The new negotiating body for school support staff in England and Wales will affect over 200,000 school support staff members, a huge group in our union. And UNISON will bring the views of those members to the negotiating table. And the Fair Pay Agreement in adult social care is a change UNISON and I have been pushing for many years. This could be a game changer for the sector, but it needs to happen sooner, not later. And we're going further than the manifesto promises. We want to stop companies profiteering from our essential services and bring privatised services back in-house. We're fighting hard to prevent a race to the bottom when it comes to pay and conditions. These ongoing negotiations we're having with the government are all really important. I can't imagine a Tory or a Reform government led by Kemi Badenoch or Nigel Farage sitting down to talk to us about how do we restore the two-tier workforce code, or how to renationalise railways or save British steel. But, and it's a big but, we didn't expect to see a Labour government attacking benefits for disabled people. It's almost as if ministers don't get the fact that most personal independence payments go to people in work. And though we welcome their change in terms of the winter fuel allowance, quite frankly, they should never have done it in the first place. And I want to see them change their mind on the two-child benefit cap. And there are signs that they will. That's as far as I can say. And we're demanding compensation for WASPy women too. And just as we're ramping up our campaign to protect migrant workers, the Labour government decides to steal the clothes of the right by limiting the number of migrants who can come to this country. Well, all I can say to them is, good luck filling all those vacancies in hospitals and care homes without overseas workers. And instead of going after migrant workers, why don't they go after the rogue employers who are using their sponsorship of visas to hold the workers to ransom? Wasn't that a fantastic debate this morning on migrant workers? I have to say the speeches were just amazing. So yes, I want a Labour government, and I'm glad that we have one. But I want a government that will work with us, not against us. And worryingly, because of Labour's missteps, we're seeing people, including some of our own members, turning to Reform. A party led by posh private schoolboys with huge personal fortunes. They pretend they're just ordinary blokes. But you don't have to look far beneath the surface to see what's really on their minds. 1 minute Farage talks about being the party for working people, and the next minute, the very day after the elections, there he was threatening to sack local government workers. That's the real Nigel Farage, the man whose party always votes against workers' rights in Parliament, but wants union members to vote for him. The man who wants the NHS to be turned into a US-style insurance system. The man who, like his role model Donald Trump, is prepared to say and do anything to get elected. If you want to know what a Reform government would look like and what it would do for working people, look across the pond at Trump's big, beautiful bill, his sweeping tax cuts package. It's basically a massive transfer of wealth from the poorest to the richest. It's estimated that 13 million Americans will lose their health insurance. Is that really the kind of future we want for our country? I'm so pleased that this afternoon we'll hear from Lee Saunders, President of the American Federation of State, County and Municipal Employees, our sister union in the US. But that's why we need to keep building a strong union. That's what I've been focusing on, not just this past year, but this past 4 years. I promised an organising strategy, and we've delivered it. And as a result, with all your hard work in branches, we've grown each and every year for the past 3 years. Last year, we recruited over 200,000 new members, a fantastic achievement. It's a net gain of over 40,000 new members, and we also got 4,000 new activists. Because it's important that when we recruit new members, we turn as many of them as possible into activists, so that you, our existing activists and leaders, aren't put under any more pressure. And I'm making sure that there's more support and resources for branches and regions. Our branch support and organising fund that was almost £3.5 million in 2022 continues to grow. It's all about giving power to local branches, regions and nations so that you can take decisions that are important to your members. And it's why we've seen more industrial action and disputes over the past few years. We're training more members than ever too through the UNISON College. 5,000 activists and 6,000 members trained this past year. And I'll be reviewing the support and training we give to activists to make sure we can do even more for you. The past few months I've been talking to activists in a number of regions, and they've told me about the burnout, the stress and the pressures they're under. So giving you the support you need is a top priority for me. Our service groups and sectors are working hard to get more money for all our members. We got higher pay increases in some of our sectors this year than we've had in many years, but that's still not enough to make up for the years when pay was kept low by the Tories. And I'm so proud of the many brilliant campaigns and disputes I've seen this past year. It's been a busy year in Scotland. Members in Scottish Water remain in dispute over their employer's failure to come up with a decent pay rise. And low-paid care workers for Enable Scotland walked out last week in the first national care strike for over a decade. I know both groups of workers have the solidarity of the entire union behind them. In Wales, UNISON's campaigning has pushed their government into changing the law so private firms can no longer make huge, eye-watering profits from looking after children in care. No one should be able to make a quick buck from looking after vulnerable children. And members in Northern Ireland have done a fantastic job ensuring that health workers are upgraded and got improved terms and conditions. That's put millions of pounds into people's pay packets. And it's probably the reason why Northern Ireland has become our fastest growing region in the past 2 years. I think membership growth has been over 20%. It's a pretty decent figure. And not far from here in Knowsley, strike action by Live housing workers resulted in an 8% pay increase and many improvements in conditions. And it's a fantastic achievement. And that's thanks to the strength and determination of our members, supported by our union and by their local branch. When I visited the picket line there, I talked to housing support workers who said they were doing this for the tenants, not just for themselves. And their pride in their action was fantastic. And inspired by the action they took, we're putting pressure on Labour to change the law to stop unscrupulous employers behaving the way Live Housing behaved to our members. I also spent a few days in the southwest recently, where every single health branch has won an upgrade for some of their Band 2 health workers, most through local disputes and negotiating, and some through strike action to force their employer's hand. We're still fighting for the phlebotomists in Gloucestershire, who so far have taken almost 100 days of strike action, and they're going to be joining us later this week. Now, as some of you may know, sadly my husband Robert died last November. He was ill for a few months, and while he was in hospital they always had difficulty finding a vein to take blood and put things into him. So every day a specialist phlebotomist would come with a little machine to scan and find the best spot. And we got to know her a little, and Robert always asked the staff, every member of staff, "Are you a UNISON member?" He'd always say to them. And we talked about our grading, and I couldn't believe it when she told me she was a band 2. Because without her essential skills and expertise, seriously, senior nursing staff couldn't do their job without her. So it's for people like her that our campaigns are so important. And this past year, we've had our first major dispute in London as part of the Pay Fair for Patient Care campaign in Woolwich and Greenwich. I had the privilege of attending both their picket lines and the celebration party that they had after they won. I spoke to members there and who told me that they felt valued at last by their success. And one woman told me she'd just booked a holiday, the first one her and her husband would have been going on for years, she said. That's the difference it makes. And these are just a tiny number of the disputes, the successful disputes and campaigns that our union is involved in. And as our name reminds us, we succeed where our branches, regions, nations, and members are all working together in unison. And as ever, Conference, fighting for equality and fairness lies at the heart of everything we do. We're working with the government on implementing the ethnic and disability pay gap legislation, which is long overdue, and something the Tories constantly said no to. And we're continuing to work through the implications of the Supreme Court judgment on sex, gender, and trans people's rights. This affects everyone in our union. I've met with the leaders of our women's, LGBT+, and our trans and non-gender specific groups. And we will find a path through this. A path that supports our policies, our values, and most importantly, our members. And we will go on fighting discrimination, intolerance, and injustice, regardless of what happens in law. We will do that wherever it happens. Conference, this past year, perhaps more than any other I can remember, it feels like international pressures are having a huge impact on our country. The world has changed so much since this time last year. We have Trump turning his back on Europe, imposing costly tariffs and starting trade wars that threaten jobs. We have escalating conflicts in Ukraine and Africa, and the situation, as we can see, is deteriorating daily in the Middle East. And we've all looked on with horror at the continued systematic destruction of Gaza and Palestine. How can our leaders continue to insist that only quiet diplomacy and carefully worded statements will bring an end to these atrocities? History will judge our government and governments around the world harshly for standing by and allowing the Israeli state, the government of Israel, to try and drive all Palestinians from their homeland. I've been working with other Labour-affiliated unions and the Palestinian ambassador to this country to bring pressure on the UK government. They must do more. Israel must be forced to respect human rights, and our government must recognise the state of Palestine. I told you last year about my visit to Palestine, which happened in May last year, as part of an international trade union group, and about the public service worker from the Jenin refugee camp that I spoke to. His dream was for a night where he didn't worry about Israeli soldiers raiding the camp, and for a small patch of ground where he could play safely with his children. And with the camp under siege and the population displaced, I often wonder where he is now. Such modest dreams, yet so far beyond his reach. A right to dignity, safety, freedom, a right that begins with the basic premise of peace and justice and a viable Palestinian state alongside Israel. And the terrible events in Sudan, now being described as the biggest humanitarian crisis in the world, with over 8 million people displaced and at least 150,000 people killed, why does it barely get a mention on the media? This global instability is forcing the UK and Europe to spend considerably more on defence and sending energy and food prices through the roof, making the lives of UK workers even tougher. So where does that leave us now? We can't trust the Tories or reform. So yes, despite the disappointments, we need Labour to succeed at Westminster. I want them to build more social housing, as Angie Rayner has promised. I want them to grow the economy, to deliver better jobs and higher wages. Conference, some people say we're too close to Labour. We're not critical enough of them. I say our role as a trade union is to hold them to account, to make sure they do what they said they'd do. I'm not here to tell them they're doing a good job. I'm here to tell them to do their job better. Just as we did when they attacked benefits, we were one of the first unions to come out and against their cut to the winter fuel allowance. And remember something, they're the ones that changed their policy, not us. Some commentators say that Labour changing their policies is a sign of weakness. Well, I disagree. I think it's a sign of maturity and hopefully of growing into government after 14 years out in the cold. It's a sign, I hope, that they're listening to us. Of course, it's nothing to do with the rise in reform or the local election results. It's all down to us and the trade union movement, I'm sure. But I want Labour to do more, to show it values our public services and the people who deliver them, our members. And how do I think they should pay for this? Not by taking money away from those least able to afford it, but by taking it from those with the deepest pockets. The UK's richest family has a fortune of over £35 billion. You can't even imagine what that would be like. If they decided, out of the goodness of their hearts, to pay for the winter fuel allowance for everyone for the remainder of this Parliament, do you know what it would do to their ranking in the top 100 richest list? Can you have a guess? Absolutely nothing. They would still be the top of the list of richest people in the UK. Do you think they or anyone else in that list would miss paying an extra 2% or even 10% more in taxes? So if the government can change their mind on other things, I say change it on taxation, tax wealth and profits. And raise the money needed to fix our country. That's the message I'll continue taking to government. Conference, over the past 4 years and before that when I was a national negotiator across different sectors in our union, I've sat across the table from senior politicians, including Prime Ministers and First Ministers, Tory, Labour and SNP. I've gone head with them, fighting for our members. And I will continue to do that, regardless of which party is in power across the UK. Because my loyalty is not to any political party. My loyalty is not to any faction in this union. Conference, I'm not in a faction. My loyalty will always be to our members, to our union, and to you. I don't care who I'm dealing with, Labour, SNP, Tory or Reform. or any combination, I will always fight for UNISON values. Why would that change because Labour's in power? Everyone in this room is a member of UNISON, the largest, most powerful union in the UK. Trade unions like ours are part of a radical movement, not a cosy part of the establishment. We're a movement for radical change. We are the living legacy of generations who dared to stand together to fight for the dignity and rights of working people. Always remember that. We win legal cases that change the history of employment rights for everyone in this country, as we did when we won our employment tribunal fees case. We notch up victories against governments, as we did when we forced the Tories to change their policies on Windrush. And we work tirelessly to improve people's lives, as you do every single day in your workplaces. Whether that's helping a member get flexible working to help look after their disabled child, or stopping a manager who always picks on the young gay man in the team. We've won huge back pay for large groups of workers, like the many women who hadn't been getting paid at the right rate for years. Up and down the country, our Pay Fair for Patient Care campaigns have won, I know it's been said previously, but it's worth saying again, £162 million, all going into the pockets of our members. That's what we do. Because our victories are not just for ourselves, but for our children, our communities, and for those who will come after us. We're here to improve the lives of working people, to give a voice to the disenfranchised, to give people a seat at the table. We're here to challenge and disrupt the status quo. I've been doing that for years, and there's plenty more to do. So I tell you, conference, even though this year has been personally really tough for me, I've no intention of giving up now. So let's keep fighting, let's keep disrupting, let's work together and make our union stronger and our members' lives better. Thank you.